Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into some absolutely fascinating clinical insights about what actually nourishes our microbiome. We're going to explore the biological science of digestion, and honestly, we're revealing some incredibly eye-opening perspectives on human health along the way. Let's just tackle a massive misconception right out of the gate. When you ask folks how to improve their gut health, what's the first thing they say? It's almost always eat more yogurt, or if you're in Japan, eat more natto. And hey, fermented foods are absolutely fantastic for you, no doubt. But treating them like some magic cure-all, that's kind of missing the forest for the trees. So here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the gut health myth, look at the truth about carbohydrates, explore why hard to digest is actually better, dive into the traditional Japanese diet, and finish up with a diet kind to all. All right, let's kick things off with part one, the gut health myth. The real secret here is that true gut health isn't just about tossing a health food on top of a highly processed diet. It's about fundamentally feeding your bacteria what they actually need. You really have to view your entire daily intake as a way of cultivating your internal garden. If you're only focused on, say, eating a cup of yogurt, but you totally ignore the primary fuel your gut microbes need to survive, you're fighting a losing battle. You literally can't supplement your way out of a bad foundation. So, the foundation for a healthy gut basically boils down to two core principles. Number one, cut out the unnatural, heavily processed foods. And number two, ensure all your nutrients and energy properly circulate through your body. The coolest part about this, if your gut bugs are thriving because you're following those two simple rules, they're going to handle the heavy lifting for the rest of your body's nutritional needs. It's like having your own internal wellness team. Moving right along to section two, the truth about carbohydrates. Now, when we hear carbs, we usually just think of bread or sweets, right? But biologically speaking, there are three main types. First, you've got sugars, the sweet stuff that spikes your blood sugar instantly. Then starches, the non-sweet ones like rice, wheat, and potatoes. And third, fiber. Yes, fiber is actually classified as a carbohydrate. And because our bodies basically can't digest it, it becomes the single most important food source for our gut bacteria. A real game changer. Think of your digestive system as a long, winding highway. When you eat sugars, they take the very first exit. They're absorbed almost immediately in the upper GI tract, spiking your blood sugar and leaving absolutely nothing for later. Starches, like white rice, cruise a little further down the road, but they're totally absorbed by the time they hit the small intestine. But fiber stays on the highway for the whole trip. It travels all the way down into the deep, large intestine, which is exactly where your hungry microbiome is eagerly waiting for delivery. Which brings us to section three. Hard to digest is better. Okay, this is where things get super counterintuitive. We're always told to eat foods that are easy on the stomach. But if you look at the comparison, we actually want our main dietary staples to be as hard to digest as possible. Take white rice. It's super easy to digest, absorbs early, spikes your blood sugar, and completely starves those deep gut bacteria. But brown rice? It's tough to digest, it absorbs slowly, keeps your blood sugar totally stable, and, crucially, it successfully makes it all the way down to feed the deep, large intestine. Picture your gut like a giant downward-pointing triangle. Up at the very top, in the stomach and early intestines, the concentration of bacteria is pretty low. But as you travel down, the triangle gets wider and wider. The absolute highest concentration and variety of gut bugs live at the very bottom, right at the end of the large intestine. So if your food is too easy to digest, it just gets completely absorbed at the narrow top. It literally never reaches that massive vital colony waiting at the bottom. And that's exactly why the clinical advice we're looking at says your main staple should be as hard to digest as possible. Eating things like brown rice, partially milled grains, or, get this, even the slightly scorched, hardened parts of cooked rice is incredibly beneficial. That scorched rice contains what's called resistant starch, and it acts just like fiber. By intentionally picking foods your body struggles to break down, you're throwing an absolute feast for your microbiome. All right, let's look at section four, the traditional Japanese diet. So how do we put all this into practice? Well, we can look at a really clever traditional Japanese dietary mnemonic, Ma-go-wa-ya-sa-shi-i. It translates roughly to grandchildren are kind, but every single syllable stands for a vital food group. Ma for beans, go for sesame, wa for seaweed, ya for vegetables, sa for fish, shi for mushrooms, and I for potatoes. This framework perfectly lines up with our biology. It gives you this incredibly diverse array of fiber-rich, complex foods. But you know what's just as fascinating as what's on that list? It's what's completely missing from it.
Notice how there is absolutely zero meat and zero dairy in there? Historically speaking, a healthy human gut, especially in populations like the Japanese, did not need huge amounts of animal products to thrive. Over centuries, their microbiomes were built on complex carbs, veggies, and just a little bit of animal protein, mainly from fish.
So, why exactly should we limit meat consumption? Well, there are a few pretty compelling clinical and environmental reasons. First off, the human gut, especially depending on your genetics, just isn't optimally structured for a super high meat diet. Second, heavy meat eating can actually mess with your gut environment, which sometimes shows up as foul bodily odors. Yikes. And finally, factory-farmed commercial meat totally violates that very first rule we talked about, avoiding unnatural foods. It often carries traces of unnatural feed, antibiotics, and even microplastics. So making commercially processed meat the center of your diet is kind of actively working against your microbiome.
And that brings us to our final section, a diet kind to all.
10. Keep that number in mind.
It takes a staggering 10 kilograms of grain just to produce a single kilogram of meat. 10. And honestly, when you factor in the water required, it takes an exponentially massive amount of resources to keep a high meat dietary system running.
You see, by eating lower on the food chain and prioritizing those plant-based, fiber-rich foods, we're doing more than just looking out for ourselves. True dietary wellness is a holistic thing. It's about choosing a lifestyle that's genuinely gentle. Gentle on animals, gentle on plants, gentle on those unseen microorganisms in the soil and in our stomachs, and gentle on the global environment as a whole. It turns out what heals our own microbiome inherently protects the Earth's ecosystems too. So it really all boils down to a choice. Are you going to eat just for your own immediate convenience, or are you going to choose a diet that's truly kind? Kind to your deep gut bacteria, kind to the Earth's limited resources, and kind to everything living on it? It's a pretty big question to leave you with, but it beautifully shows that the ultimate measure of our health is how harmoniously we live with nature, and that starts right at our dinner table. Thanks so much for hanging out with me for this explainer, and I really hope this gives you some food for thought for your next meal.